You hear about it on the news, or maybe it's happened to you. Identity theft and the latest scams. Today on Money in Your Pocket, Julie Vahling from A.A.R.P joins me to educate us about the many ways in which you can become a victim of fraud, but more importantly, how you can protect yourself. Julie will talk to us about some common scams and what resources are out there in case you become a victim. That's all just ahead, so stay right here.
This program is made possible in part by Credit Union One. Proud to support Money in Your Pocket. Credit Union One offers savings and lending options. Additional information on membership available at creditunionone.org. Loans subject to approval. Accounts are insured up to $250,000. By member's choice, this institution is not federally insured.
Hello and welcome to Money in Your Pocket. I'm your host, Lori Banks, and today we're talking about fraud and identity theft with our friend Julie Vahling from A.A.R.P. Welcome back.
Well, thanks, Lori. It's good to be here.
You actually appeared on one of our other shows on Being Well, and
Yes.
when we were talking about a show on identity theft and fraud, I thought of you because that's an area that A.A.R.P. covers.
Yes, we do. Years ago, when A.A.R.P. was first founded, it was to protect the financial security for people retirees at that time. But now our age membership is 50 plus. Many of those people aren't retired. They're still out in the workforce. And so we're still working to protect those financial resources. And protecting people's financial resources entails fraud, identity theft, and all of those scams that are out there today, which they're just rampant.
I know, I was going to say that if it happens to you, it's an awful thing. It'd be scams, identity theft. It's pretty widespread, and they seem to come up with new ways of stealing your identity or your money.
Yes, we at A.A.R.P. embrace modern technology. We love to see people, understanding the new devices and utilizing it to stay in touch or, to be educated and those kind of things. However, modern technology has also brought the scam artist more ways to access personal information, documents, financial resources, etc.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to go through several scenarios and ways that you can get in trouble here. Let's talk first about identity theft. We hear about that a lot. Can happen online use. Tell us a little bit about the ways in which we can have our identity stolen.
Okay. Quite simply, identity theft is just what it sounds like. It's when an individual obtains personal information that allows them to portray themselves as another individual. And there are many ways that we put ourselves at risk of having our identity stolen. One of the common ways that we don't really think about is junk mail, our mailboxes. In our mailboxes, many people have personal documents that they don't think how easy it is for individuals to access. What we like to encourage people to do is to keep kind of a calendar somewhere in their personal office or their personal papers that documents, what day your bank statement comes on, what day your credit card bills come on, simply for the fact that way when you go to the mailbox and your bank statement hasn't appeared for 3 or 4 days, you can directly contact the bank, because those kind of documents have a lot of information that allow identity theft artists the ability to get a move into your financial resources, utilize your name, your birth date, your address, to apply for credit cards. We encourage people to use, opt-out services for the junk mail. They're free. It's good to go on and renew any of those services that you may have, opted into, whether it's the Do Not Call registry, whether it's, the junk mail registry. We want to make sure that people are staying on top of those things, because that's the simplest way really that people can access personal information. Of course, online, many people use internet shopping, especially, during the holiday seasons. People utilize, their internet to access gifts for everyone.
Right.
But part of the problem is if you're not using a secure website, and by a secure website, I mean it's HTTPS, which helps encode, the financial information that you're disclosing. So you want to make sure that you're using a secure website. You want to make sure that you're not using public networks. So if I go to the local coffee shop and I'm going to catch up on my Christmas shopping, I don't want to do it over the coffee shop's
See,
public
I
Wi-Fi
would've-
system.
Why is that? I never would have thought of that.
Well, there are certain ways that scam artists and identity thieves can access information that's on a public network. Now, there are certain devices that you can utilize within your computer or your your smartphone to protect yourself. But many of us don't think about that. We're maybe not paying attention. So it's just better that anytime you're going to utilize your personal financial resources online, to do it from your home computer.
Okay, because there's some more safety.
Yes,
in there.
yes.
Do like tablets or smartphones, are they at higher risk? I shop on my tablet a lot and not on a regular computer. Is one more risky than other?
Not
than the other?
necessarily. It really is what Wi-Fi network
It's
you're
the
using.
Wi-Fi. Okay.
Right. Because if you're on a public Wi-Fi system, even though you put in a user code, it still may be accessed by other individuals that have access to that network.
Okay.
And it seems secure because you're typing in a security code,
Right.
but it really is not. And
Okay.
as I said, modern technology and the individuals who, many of us out there have jobs or have had jobs. Scam artist jobs are to stay on top of how they can get access to information.
Wow.
They spend their days thinking of new ways to tap into computer systems.
Right.
And as we have seen, unfortunately, even the most secure of systems, if an individual has the technology background and the education or the ability to tap into those systems, and we've seen them, banking systems, government systems,
Right.
there is always a possibility. So people need to, pay attention.
So if your identity is stolen, what should you do? Who do you turn to?
Okay, first of all, we want to encourage people to use access to their credit reports. By law, an individual can there are 3 credit reporting agencies. You can get a free copy of your credit report every year.
Okay.
We encourage people to stagger those reports so that you're getting one every 4 months from a different reporting agency. And that way you can look for any fraudulent activity that may be going on. There was a credit card opened in your name at XYZ store. Well, I don't have a credit card at XYZ store.
Yeah.
If you know that you've had your wallet stolen, or you see issues on your bank statement, or you see issues on your credit statement or on a credit card, the first step you would think would be to call the bank or the credit card agency. Actually, the first step that an individual should take if they believe they are a victim of identity theft or any fraudulent activity is to call local law enforcement.
Okay.
You want to get that police report on file. That police report is a vital tool when you are then following up from perhaps any charges, when you
Okay.
are
You've
dealing
got
with the credit
document.
reporting agencies.
Okay.
Yes, you want that
Okay.
document secured. And then by all means, you want to contact your bank, your credit card companies. You want to make sure that you are contacting, and I encourage people, not only local law enforcement, but if you live in a community where you can access the local media, to let them know
Yeah.
about the scams
That's where
that are
we hear a
going
lot
on.
of, a
Yes.
lot of that is going around through the local news.
Yep, and that is so great that people are sharing this information, because oftentimes, we think what sounds too good to be true is too good to be true. But there are times, and con artists and scam artists, they understand the ways to prey on individuals' emotions to build up fear. And we need to make sure that, as communities, that we're focusing on keeping the word out about things. It doesn't matter, what your job is, or what your education level is, or, how old you are. We're all human, and we're all, potential victims.
Well,
to
and
these-
when you get that, I will share with the viewers, I work here at Eastern, but I'm also taking classes, so I'm looked at as a student, and there was a scam going around where a number that says it's the Chicago FBI called me. I didn't get very far, they hung up, but I found out that they were calling students and saying, you're late, you owe this much money. I mean, I was panicky for a few minutes, and because I looked at the phone number, and that's what was scary, is the phone number was legitimate. It said, when I looked it up online, it said it was a Chicago FBI. So it's frightening.
It is frightening. In relation to that, as I talked about too, modern technology. Well, modern technology has bought us those wonderful little things. There's an app for that. Well, guess what? There is an app that can change the identity of the phone you're calling from to a different number. And so scam artists are able to portray themselves as the FBI, as the IRS, as the local First National Bank because of modern technology. And we want to encourage people, you know, if you have a call like that, not only to contact, you know, the proper authorities and stuff, but to also, you know, make sure that if you think it's legitimate, you then in turn ask for a physical address, a phone number, and then you do a little bit of research and make sure that it's a legitimate, you know, property. I do want to mention too, as far as individuals that to contact, our Attorney General's office here in Illinois does a wonderful job protecting individuals and fighting for consumers who have been victims of fraud. And so we really do want to encourage people to, you know, to contact the Attorney General's office when you're involved with any kind of fraudulent issues.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about some investment fraud schemes that are out there.
Okay, it's really kind of amazing, and this goes back a little bit to the fact of, you know, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. Gold and silver are a big investment fraud. The people involved will say, you know, the climate for the economy is, you know, bad. You need to invest your money into gold and silver because your investment will produce, you know, 100-fold. When in all reality, a lot of times what they are selling you is not worth what they are selling you. Individuals in, you know, real estate issues.
Yes, I think the old come for this, here's this free vacation, you know, for this timeshare. I think the old, I don't know, timeshare scam thing goes back a long ways where, oh, you get this free vacation. Well, when you get there, it's something completely different.
Completely different, yes. And, you know, that's where, too, some of the responsibility does lay on the consumers. And, you know, contact Better Business Bureau, check out those individuals, check with the Attorney General's office on whether or not there have been filings against those companies. And a lot of times when it comes back to, it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, yes. You know, even investment frauds in and of themselves, you know, there are certain industries that people can reach out to. There is actually the Investor Education Foundation, which saveandinvest.org, where you can go and check the level of credibility for entities. So we want to make sure, like I said, that people are, you know, doing a little bit of research before you jump into anything.
And it's really not hard. I mean, you can kind of go online and you can sort of gauge if this is legitimate or not. I mean, the beauty of the internet is if they've done something, a lot of people are going to complain about it online, you know, so you can find out about it
There's
that way.
There's a complaint filed somewhere.
Yes.
You know, and also don't be hesitant to reach out to your local investment companies, because and say, hey, you know, this gentleman approached me about investing in this. What do you know about it? Perhaps the investor may look at it as a way to get you back into their office.
True.
So yeah.
So there are several other common scams that we've heard of. This tech support one, that's a scary one, where all of a sudden it says your computer is infected with a virus, and you click on something, and then what happens?
Well, once you've clicked on that button, you've opened up your computer to whoever the other person is on the other end. And 99.9% of the time, if it's not been initiated by you, it is someone who is doing a fraudulent activity. So we want to encourage people at all times, when you have those pop-ups, ignore them. If you think you have a virus, contact a local computer support system, because those individuals will, you know, a local business that you can trust to come and actually check your computer for viruses and viruses and other threats. Because those online, you know, this is Microsoft, you've got a bug, you know, click here to resolve it. Not only do you end up maybe paying $99 that you will never see anything for, but your computer that was actually clean before is now infected with a virus.
So this is another one, disaster-related charity funds or any kind of charity funds. I mean, you get calls, you know, if there's a big, you know, earthquake or, you know, people calling asking for money. How do you know what's legitimate or not? And it could even be, you know, like the local police chapter may be doing their fundraiser. So you don't want to think that everybody that calls and asks for money is a scam artist. There are some legitimate ones out there.
Yes, there are. What we really want to encourage people, because of, like I said earlier, the fact that scam artists, this is their full-time job. And so I'm going to use, for instance, Veterans Day. When, we hit the Veterans Day season, individuals know that, well, this is the time to go and try and pull a, veteran support scam.
Right.
So you want to make sure that you can verify the existence of the said company. And that's coming back to, once again, contacting the Attorney General's office, the Better Business Bureau. There is a charity, and I don't know, there's a charity website that individuals can contact, and you can just Google charity fraud, and the website should pop up. Because you can actually go on and check the legitimacy of an organization.
Yeah.
Because they have to have file paperwork.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other thing you can do, if someone calls and you want to give, just say, I don't feel comfortable giving over the phone. Can you send me something? And then you get that piece of paper in your hand and you can actually, or is there a place where I can deliver the money to personally if it's a local charity?
If it's a local charity, absolutely. And oftentimes too, many of those charities do have some association with a local charity. So your United Ways you can contact, to find out if they're doing things. The local Red Cross chapters, those kind of things. So if there's somewhere local that you can go to get verification, that's highly encouraged.
Let's talk about one called sweetheart scams. People who, are deciding to date online. Maybe someone who hasn't dated in a long time, maybe they lost their spouse. There's people out there ready to take advantage of
Yes,
that.
there are. And just because you may have perhaps met that individual on a legitimate website, companion website site, doesn't mean that that individual doesn't have ulterior motives. And so, we want to encourage people, by all means, to socialization is a big part of aging friendly, but make sure that you've put into place some protections for yourself when engaging with those individuals. And if you meet someone and within the first month they're asking you for $1,000 to help make their car payment or their rent payment, that may be a big red light that it's time to terminate that relationship. And if you have family members that you can let know about those encounters, that is definitely helpful.
Yeah, we hear about those stories, on the news or on news magazine shows about things that happen. So, and not all. I met my husband online; he was legit. So there are some good ones out there. Not everybody's out there. I want you to talk about this. I never heard of this one. It's called the grandparent scam.
The grandparent scam. Essentially, what individuals do is they call someone who potentially may have a grandparent or be a grandparent, which isn't hard to find in today's world. Social media is a great tool for staying connected, but it also allows individuals to very quickly identify if you're potentially a grandparent. If your profile picture shows, you and your grandchild, well, bingo, there's a potential grandparent. They Google your name, they get your phone number, they call you at 2 a.m. on a Thursday evening. Grandma, the girls and I decided to take a trip to Chicago, and then I got, thrown in jail, and Mom's going to be so upset with me. Can you please, wire me $500? And before you know it, Grandma said, well, now Julie, calm down. And well, boom, now I know that the grandchild's name is Julie. And Grandma goes immediately to a Western Union and, sends the money, and
you're out the money.
No, and granddaughter Julie is safely tucked away in bed that night. So, and it does happen, and it happens to many individuals. The biggest thing with frauds and scams that's hard to help people get over is feeling perhaps a little embarrassed that they fell for it, and it happens, and it happens to everyone regardless of their age. Their education, there is no demographic that is not potentially targeted by a con artist.
Everybody is at risk. It's not just 75-year-old grandma who isn't computer savvy. It can happen to anybody.
Yes.
I mean, it happened to my parents. They, live in the country in Minnesota, and they were south for the winter, and they have all their mail forwarded, but they think someone took a credit card statement from their mailbox, and it was a disaster.
And it does become, I mean,
Yeah.
having your identity stolen can be a very hard thing then to overcome. And as you just mentioned, you know, one of the simple ways that if people have the ability to is to not utilize a street mailbox for mail delivery or to mail out information. You know, do not dispose of your junk mail at the gas station when you're cleaning your car out while you're filling it up. Monitor those credit reports. Make sure that you're keeping an eye on what's going on. Debit and credit cards. Using debit and credit cards at locations such as gas stations, retail stores, online shopping. There are tools or devices that individuals can plant actually on that payment process center that, you know, allows them to get all that information. Debit cards compared to credit cards, you're more likely to have a higher amount that you could be liable for with a debit card than a credit card. And so, you know, even though it is really, you know, debit cards have a lot of advantages because you are utilizing, you know, your finances that are available, not quote unquote borrowing on your credit. There is, however, you know, a little bit of, I think $50 is the current up to liability for a credit card, where it can be up to $500 for a debit card.
Wow.
So there, you know, there are some protections, especially, you know, when you're comparing the two, if you think you could be at risk of that.
Okay, and I think it's also not a bad idea if you're traveling, call your local bank, say we're going to Georgia for a week or so. Call your credit card company. Not every credit card company is good about noticing and alerting charges. Some are better than others. I have heard with some debit cards you can set a limit on how much can be charged per day.
Yes, but and those are all great tools. But as you stated earlier, it's, you know, there are many good companies out there that do monitor closely and reach out to the consumer to say, hey, we saw a charge for XYZ.
Did you charge that?
Was that your charge? You know, and that's great. However, you know, that's not a written small print agreement that they're going to take on that responsibility. So it's, you know, really up to the consumer to protect themselves.
That's what I was going to say. It's really up to us to be diligent about, you know, looking at our bank statements, looking at our credit report, you know, checking those credit card statements. You know, it amazes me that, you know, your mailbox has now become, you know, this unsecure place. I used to never think about mailing, you know, checks or anything. You didn't worry about that. But
no, it's a different time. But
it certainly is.
We're hoping the Fraud Watch Network is actually an entity of A.A.R.P. that has been created to help people stay on top of issues that are happening. You do not have to be a member to sign up. You can simply go to the AARP.org website. Type in Fraud Watch Network. You can sign up and get alerts delivered directly to your email inbox about new scams that are going on in the state, in the region, new tools that, you know, scam artists are using. Frank Abagnale.
Yes, I want you to tell me this story. If you've seen the movie Catch Me If You Can, it was about the true story of Frank Abagnale, who was a con artist.
He was a con artist, and
he's got an interesting connection.
He is just. He's got a really interesting background as far as a, you know, con artist goes, because if you have seen the movie, you know, he portrayed himself as an airline pilot.
Yes.
And did all kinds of investment schemes, and now we are very lucky that he has partnered with us to help educate people about the different ways that con artists, you know, work their work. And it has been a real, you know, valuable tool, getting it from a quote unquote insider on the frauds and scams. And so I encourage people to, you know, if you can go on the website, our website, and, you know, take a little quiz with him and walk through some common, you know, ways that con artists work their magic, bad magic. But, you know, it allows people to see that these individuals have a face, and for better or worse, they exist in the world, and we need to try and make sure that we prepare ourselves. One other thing I want to touch on too quickly, though, is we talked a lot about, you know, phone scams, internet scams, but even in-person scams. In today's world, any business that is a legitimate business will have, their employees will have identity. They will have a badge. Do not be afraid if someone appears at your door portraying to be XYZ utility company, you know, to not let them into your home. even if they present identification, and to make a contact to that company.
Right.
Because you can call XYZ Utility and say, hey, I had a technician here at my door this morning wanting to talk to me about, wiring inside my home.
Yeah.
Is this legitimate? Oftentimes those companies too do send out letters notifying you prior to those kind of
I've
things.
gotten those before. Technicians will be in your area doing this, and usually it's not inside your home.
No, and because one of the things that's going on with a lot of the electric utility companies are the installation of smart meters, which are devices installed onto homes. They do not have to come into your home, but Ameren, one of the local providers, has been very good about notifying people that you may have a person in your yard.
Yes.
So and those are legitimate. But as I said, if you have someone knock on your door, even with proper identification, there is no reason for you not to first verify that individual is who they say they are.
All right. Well, Julie, this half hour went too fast for us, so we'll have to have you back again. So thank you so much for enlightening us on what's going on in the world of identity theft and scams. Sounds like we just need to be diligent and protect ourselves.
Yep. Well, thank you very much for letting me share the information.
Thanks. Here's the bottom line for identity theft and fraud. Be diligent because it can happen to anyone at any age. You can protect yourself by monitoring billing and financial accounts on a regular basis, and also your credit report. Do your homework if someone calls and asks for a donation or investment. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Never give out your personal information over the phone. And finally, there are several resources online for reporting fraud and checking the validity of businesses. Thanks for joining us this week on Money in Your Pocket, and we hope you'll come back again and see us next time.
This program is made possible in part by Credit Union One. Proud to support Money in Your Pocket. Credit Union One offers savings and lending options. Additional information on membership available at creditunion1.org. Loans subject to approval. Accounts are insured up to $250,000. By member's choice, this institution is not federally insured.